There's no doubt that catching beach worms can be challenging. So today I'm going to show you how I go about catching them. Firstly with pliers, then small ones with my fingers, then some that I have to dig out, and then we'll work up to the bigger worms. And I'll show you exactly what I do with those to get them out of the sand. They are expensive little items if you've got to buy them and you use big worms, and a lot of them, in a session. Hopefully to make the job just a little bit easier for you next time you go out. And not every day is going to be easy. Some days are going to be much easier than others, depending on how hungry they are, how much they come up. But these worms, they're actually blind. They're in the intertidal zone between low and high tide mark, and every beach is a little bit different. Some beaches you'll get them right at the low tide, other beaches you'll get them between low and half tide, and other ones come up best after the half tide ends. Let's get into it and show you what I do. Now I'm going to cover several different beaches with different worms on, different size worms, different texture of sand, and by the end of the video you'll have a fair idea how to catch all types of worms. We'll start with the pliers, then we'll work to the small worms with your finger and thumb up to the bigger worms, and hopefully I'll be able to show you the technique I use, and you too can use a similar technique, and with a bit of practice you can be getting these massive worms out of the sand. A few things to know about beach worms. Firstly, they're blind, so they can't see you, but because they're blind they're very sensitive to smell and to vibration. So if you're stomping on the sand or you bump them, they'll disappear very quickly under the sand and won't bother to come back up again. Their sense of smell is very good, so waving a piece of bait as the wave recedes is the way to get them up. They smell it under the sand and bang, come up looking for that food. What else we know? They're in the between low and high tide mark. Like I was saying, halfway between the low tide and high tide is a preferred time for me. Yeah, there are two types of worms traditionally along the east coast of Australia. That is the slimy whitehead, or pinky, some people call them. They're long and thin and soft and are usually fairly low. They're closer to the low tide mark than the other worm, which is the stumpy kingworm, greenback is another name for them. They're much thicker. I prefer them as a bait because they're much stronger. They don't grow as long as the slimies, but they're much thicker. There's more worm per metre, I guess, of worm, because they are so much thicker. So it's about half tide in at the moment, and the worms coming up better now than they did when the tide was much lower. It's one of those theories that I have. A lot of people say to go at low tide. However, I would recommend, if they're not there at low tide, look at the half tide in, or maybe half tide out. I've got a rod holder with a bag and just a mullet in there. You don't need a lot to get these worms up.
So this is pretty much how you'll see them come up to the bait, and you just watch how quickly they can disappear. When using
pliers, there's only one side moving, as I've sort of mentioned in a previous video. The side on the left doesn't move, just so your fingers are moving the right hand side. So the idea is to get this side that doesn't move as close to the worm as possible. Like that. Simple. The right hand side of the pliers affects the left hand side of the tip. So because the right hand side is in the palm of your hand, it's virtually not moving. It's your fingers moving, but it's moving the right hand side of the tip like that. So you want to get this side as close to the worm as possible, so as you're not pushing the worm across. If you're on the worm's there and you're pushing it across, by the time you do that, it's too late, it's disappeared. I'll just show you what I mean. Like that, and then come in and pull out like that. So it's fairly, once you line it up, just a quick snap of the fingers and you'll have the worm. Just a little worm, but good whiting bait. Okay, there's a couple of worms here. Now you've got to wait until that wave's going back. When there's a wave coming up, don't try and snap at them, because inevitably you'll miss them every time. Actually, when the wave comes, they normally go down as the wave's coming in. But these ones are really reluctant to come up. Coming up a little bit. It's a nice thick worm, but really short. I mean, that's about 40 centimetres at full stretch. For anyone that has trouble with their thumb, arthritis or whatever, that the pliers can be very handy just to help you get a few worms. There we go. Another one there too. And get a go at him. Yeah, they're only small worms. Another one down here.
There you go, 3 worms in quick succession.
So the sand's a little bit softer here, so I can just whip them out. One just there. Will he come up? There's a wave. Oh yeah, there he is. So snap on him, and the sand's soft enough to bring him out, and he's short enough. Pretty simple. It's only a little worm, but that's the idea. These are really great worms when you're learning, not too hard to get out of the sand. The main thing is that you remember how the pliers work. There's one side moving only. The main thing is you can see that the right hand side of the pliers are moving, left hand's relatively stationary. So get the left hand side as close to the worm as possible, bring the right hand side in like that, and then snap at the last second. And then you'll at least have hold of it by then. And then it's a matter of working out if it's going to come out of the sand easily, if the sand's soft, or if it's a big worm it might be quite difficult. You may have to hold on to it and dig down. But the best way to find out how to do it is practice. There's one come out. This sand is very hard on this beach. So if you catch them with pliers, you really need to dig down. So I've hooked onto him there, but the sand is so hard, I'm going to have to dig down to get him out of the sand. Even though there's a slurry of water underneath there. So there we go. See, this one's grown a new tail, but the question is, do they grow a new tail, or does the tail grow a new head? Now just shut on it, now dig. Sand is really hard. Anyway, once you get in coming, you're right. It's only a small worm, but when the sand's that hard, you really do need to dig. Even the smallest worms can break off. There we go. You get 3 or 4 whiting baits out of that one. So most of these ones are very short, small worms. Even though the sand's really hard, you still need to dig down at times, but don't fall into the trap of grabbing hold of the worms with the pliers and then trying to pull them up, because they will inevitably break off. The idea is to grab hold of the worm and hold. Do not pull, just hold, and then dig down. When you get down far enough, with your other hand, finger and thumb, get hold of the worm and then pull from the bottom up. You'll find they'll come up fairly well on most occasions. So that's what you've got to try and avoid. See how there's sand in there? There's the gap there, and they can just slide straight through the pliers. So you've got to try and avoid getting sand in your pliers. Here we go. These small worms, but they're great worms to practice on, this size. You still get 3 or 4 whiting baits out of that. So he just arched then and was going down when I grabbed hold of him. That's when you don't grab hold of them. So they just break off. So that's what can happen with pliers. This is where sometimes you need to use your finger and thumb. There we go. Again. That time just got the head. It was a slimy, real soft. Don't catch slimies with your pliers. You need to use your finger and thumb. There you go. It's eye level and it's just touching the ground. Just touching the sand. A pinky. Slimy, whitehead. So just squeeze in slowly till I get him and then pull him out. They're small worms, but a lot of the time you'll catch these small ones. He's just biting my palm of my hand, which they do. They got a little mouth. Doesn't hurt, it's just more more shock than anything. Another one there. They just squeeze in slowly, pull him out. Good whiting worms these, they catch a lot of different species. Brim, flathead, salmon will even take them. Now beach worms are blind, so they rely on their sense of smell and feel. I missed that one then because the sand had washed away and I squeezed on him. Because they're so slippery, they just slide out from your fingers. You need to get some sand in between your finger and your thumb, each side of the worm, to enable you to have the grip to be able to pull it out of the sand. A lot of people will try and get the worm like that, but I go like that because I figure there's a lot more space there that you can grab the worm. So I bend my index finger. That way, see, I had sand around it, gave me the grip necessary to get it out of the sand. Squeeze slowly, just pull it out. It's like they don't even know you've got them because there's no resistance. So I like to go down, bend my index finger, feel for the worm, squeeze slowly. There you go. Provided you move slowly, they don't seem to mind your fingers moving under the sand. So these ones are coming out fairly easily, but the same principles involved in getting the big ones out. Once you latch on to them, before they realise that you have them, you just get them moving out of the sand, but don't stop. Just keep moving. While they're moving like that, they can't dig their legs in and stop the progress. Down, feel for the worm, I can feel it, squeeze in and just pull her out. That one started to dig its legs in. Once you disturb the worms, they get a bit of a shock. That's it, they're gone down, they won't bother coming up again. Got to search for another worm. When I'm using my finger and thumb and I'm pushing into the sand, like pushing down like that, I'm getting the worm there, between there and the middle of my thumb. So I'm squeezing in slowly like that, just like that. Squeeze slowly. Squeeze slowly and pull out. Squeeze slowly and pull out. There will be some days where the worms are really reluctant to come up, and I find that's when you get those hot offshore breeze blowing, where the sand blasts your legs. When the worm sticks its head up, it gets hit with this sand going at a great velocity. Of course, you can imagine it only comes up once and doesn't want to come up to that torture again. So when you get those strong offshore breezes blowing, especially when it's hot, they are very reluctant to come up. This afternoon I've come down for some beach worms, and boy, are they looking pretty good. They're bloody huge. I'm having trouble getting my fingers around them and holding them because they're so strong. A lot of the time they're pulling through, but if I can time it perfectly, I can squeeze on them and get them out of the sand before they lock in. Once they lock in, that's it. You've either got to dig down and extract them, or they just pull through your fingers. Little one. Good whiting bait.
Whoa, that's a good worm. Whoa, look at that worm. That's not only thick, it's long as well.
They're little snakes, aren't they?
Oh, that's another good worm.
There we go. Caught him under the water.
Oh my God, that's huge. These are unbelievable worms.
So the more worming you actually do, the more you get to know about them. Some days they'll come up really well. It's like they're really hungry and they'll come well out of the sand. Other days they might come up once and then not come up again. And then other days they just will not come up at all. And you would swear there's no worms on that particular beach. They don't like an offshore breeze blowing where the sand's blowing down the beach. They'll come up once, they get hit in the head with the sand. It's like us getting hit in the head with bricks. They won't come up again. There's two types of worms. There's pinkies, slimies or whiteheads, different people call them. They grow long and thin and they're quite slimy, hence the name. And then we have stumpies, kingworms also known as, and they are shorter generally and fatter. So they're short, fat worms. Probably a better bait is the stumpies, or the greenbacks, another name for them. But they can grow up to, they reckon they grow up to about 2 meters in length. Anyway, I've seen some big ones in the intertidal zone here on this beach. So I'm going to try and get them. But I think the challenge with big worms is you've got to catch them with your fingers. I doubt you'll get them with pliers because they're so strong they'll just break off. Once you grab hold of them, you've got to make sure that you've got plenty of sand between your fingers, or your finger and thumb, and the worm. Because if you don't, they'll slip through. They're so powerful. No doubt that catching worms on the beach can be very enjoyable, but also a massive challenge, especially when the worms are up to 2 meters long. And I'm not talking about slimies, I'm talking about stumpies or kingworms. They're thick, they're strong, they're powerful. Add to that, you get about 3 seconds to 5 seconds in between waves coming in, and then when they eventually draw back, you get 1 to 2 seconds to try and catch the worm. So a lot of them you will need to catch under the water. As that wave comes back, you'll get 2 or 3 seconds maximum. He dug in. Look how thick they are. They're like 5 or 6 millimeters across. Well, you don't need too many worms at that size. I'm wondering, are these worms too big for bait? They'd be great for jewfish, mulloway, on a big hook, like you need a 6 to 8.0 hook to give these worms any justice. The biggest problem I've got here this morning is the lack of time in between peaks of the waves. Then by the time the wave goes back, break too soon. You don't get time, so you're catching them, you're virtually catching them under the water. Not a bad worm. And they're thick though, good dewy baits. Another good worm. Oh, one more and I think that might do me. There's a big worm just down here, I think. If I can get a go at him. The size of him. Oh my god, that one's 2 meters, and that is that one's 2 meters long, and it's well above my head. That is a snodger of a worm. That's my arm's up as high as I can get it, and it's still touching the ground, and that's a stumpy. That is a worm and a half. Okay, next step. So what I do is drag that slime from the outside. Then put them in a bit of dry sand again, that way they'll keep a fair bit longer. That was one worm, my goodness. Another one, the smaller one. cover them in sand, hold the head, drag the slime and the sand off, put them in sand again, and then put them in your container. Look at that beautiful colour, they look like rainbows. What worms, eh? What worms these are. So grab the head, slide it through, that broke off. There's not too much worry about them breaking. You will use pieces of worms, you won't use a whole worm. There we go. By removing that slime or mucus, the worms will actually last a lot longer. That slime tends to send them off. There's nothing less than about 1.2 metres, 4 foot. Oh, broke that one too. Head, drag that slime off together with the sand, put them in dry sand again. The container's going to be full with about 8 worms. There you go, my bucket's full. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe, like and share. And we'll catch you next time. Bye for now. Thanks for watching.